Hey YouTube, this is BGA. Hope everyone's been well. I'm going to try my best to do a 10-minute video. I know I've been saying that for the last couple videos, but hope we can do that today. And I'm going to talk to you about rangefinders versus SLRs, and I've got a Nikon D7000 here with the 1800, with the 18 to 200 zoom lens on it. And this is the second edition. I'll get into that later. I've got my pimped out Fuji X100s with the custom case from J&K. The soft release shutterbug button, the thumbs up support grip, the back cover, which is completely removable, nicely lined, and I did get this in the optional bridle leather. So yeah, this is and this does have the original Fuji hood, adapter ring. I do have the Fuji UV filter that was designed for this camera, but I recently changed it out to a Hoya HD2 UV filter. This is a 49mm lens. It's a fixed focus lens at 35 millimeters, and that's a true 35 millimeters. It does have the same crop sensor size as the D7000, which is what makes this camera so unique and desirable. Of course, you know, people are going to debate megapixels versus sensor size, but anyway, you can get great images regardless of what camera you have. You can get great images with a Holga with a plastic lens. Actually, some of my favorite images I've taken with a plastic toy camera and medium format film. So, but now all of these three cameras, I'm not sure of the current price on the D7000, but run in the roughly $1,200 price range. The difference being with the Fuji X100s, you get a lens that's, even for a used lens, which is fine. That's where I buy all of my Leica gear, for the most part, pre-owned, because Leica people tend to take great care of their stuff. This is a 50mm. I have a 35mm coming, and also a 90. But anyway, the lens alone for the Leica is the same price as the entire Fuji. And just to point out, this is a Leica M6, so this is a film camera. Look how small this lens is. This is a 39, just for comparison's sake, this is a 39mm. What did I say? A 49mm. And then this is 72. This is a 72. I have a larger lens, but okay. So 72, 49, and then a 39. Which, comparing these two cameras, it's unbelievable. You can tell why the Leica is so popular for photojournalists who do a lot of traveling. So I have not shot film in years. Well, no, that's not true. I did take an elective course in college and got a cheap Nikon FM10 because we had to have a fully manual camera, and shot black and white, which is predominantly what I like using film for. So I'm not going to get too much into the technical specs because that would make this video pretty long, but I want to talk to you about real world usage, how it feels shooting each one of these cameras. I just got the Leica. I've always wanted a Leica. Kind of been wanting to get back into film, simply because I love the darkroom process. I don't unfortunately have the space right now to set up my own, but I do like the whole process. It's an organic process, no computers involved. I've never gotten the colors from my D7000, my D700, my D90, my D70, any of my digital cameras. I haven't tried with the X100s. I haven't gotten the colors to print, and I years ago bought a huge Epson commercial printer, calibrated my monitor, etc., and still got unexposed pictures, weird looking skies, etc. I've tried having some pictures commercially printed, and it's the same thing, just not what not the kind of quality that we used to get if in the film days, if you went to a good photo lab, and especially not the quality if you went to a pro photo lab. So real world shootability. I haven't taken this camera out of its bag in months. I love it. It has this quiet mode that is actually quieter than the Leica. If you're a fan of the Ken Rockwell website, he basically says this is just the best all-around camera. There's a D7000 that I think they made a couple tweaks to it. But this, it's a heavy camera. It's a lens-heavy camera, and the problem that was supposed to be fixed, see if I can duplicate it, probably not. Yeah, there we go. Is it won't stay at one focal length unless you hold it there. The original version did not have this lock on the side. You can lock it, but what I found from experience is that lock is always on right when at the decisive moment when I want to get a shot. What I love about this camera is going to sporting events, getting up close, being able to really zoom in, getting a relatively shallow depth of field. I do have the 70-200, which is a massive 77 millimeter. It takes a 77 millimeter filter. That's a huge, heavy lens. I used the Nikon strap with this. It's something that when I used it, I was planning on going out to take photographs that day. It wasn't just something that I carried in my bag. Now, you know, it's really not the most fair comparison. Unfortunately, I don't have the lens here with me, but I do have the Nikon 50mm fixed prime 1.8, which is the gilded lens, so it does not have the aperture ring, which both the Leica and the X100s do. That lens is pretty small. And if you're looking at these, thickness, height. Now the X100s and the D7000 both have built-in flashes. This is all kind of plasticky. However, I believe that there's a aluminum or some sort of metal body underneath of it. I've never had any problems because I'm extremely careful with my equipment. It certainly doesn't have the professional feel of the D700, or especially the D700 with the battery grip. Carrying there's a few events that I go to every year to photograph, where I take my D700, my 70-200, my 14-24, and I mean, I need a whole backpack just to take those. If you're a guy looking for a great camera, let's say you just got engaged or something, so you want to always have a camera to take some engagement photos, or have someone else nearby take them for you. Or this is not a really friendly, having a DSLR. I mean, unless your girlfriend, fiance, wife is into photography, for the most part, it's kind of like really, you're taking that thing? Why? And then it swings around, bangs into her, or she gets, anyway. Maybe that's just me. So with the and another thing, this is intimidating. This scares people. I've gotten I've looked at photos that I've taken with this. See, like right now, I forgot that the lens was locked. I've aimed this at people, and it scares them. I've looked at the images afterwards and gotten some interesting faces back. But in the studio, I mostly used the D700, but it's a great studio camera. It's a great sports and action camera if you need a fast shutter speed. I believe the max shutter speed on this is an 8,000th of a second. You can go up to some crazy ISOs. If you don't know about aperture, ISO, shutter speed, just comment and I can do a video. But there's tons on YouTube. Okay, maybe this video is going to be a little bit longer, as usual. So you've got you've got an extremely high burst rate. You've got all sorts of autofocus modes, vibration reduction features. I was just playing around with the menu system, which I haven't used in a long time, and was just amazed at all of the options that Nikon gives you. It's just a shame that I've personally never been able to duplicate what I get in the camera, what I see in the LCD onto paper. And I've talked to pros who have huge galleries and make huge digital prints, and I've tried the ICC profiles and all of that, and not just can't do it for some reason. So and if I just pop out the card and take it to like a CVS or you know, your local pharmacy, wherever you are, and you can pop it in, your SD card, which, by the way, this camera and the X100s take full-size SD cards, and are compatible with the XC, the extremely high capacity cards. I have a, what do I have in here? I have like a 64, and the other one is a 16. But you can put 2 cards in this camera. So if you're a wedding photographer, an event photographer, whatever, you need to sort of stay in the background, or you should really stay in the background and out of sight as much as possible. You have a quiet mode on here, so you can basically there's a mirror that flaps, and that's the sound you hear when you press the shutter on a DSLR. So in quiet mode, which is it's actually quieter than the Leica, which Leica was always known for its quietness. I've taken photos in places where, you know, it says photographs aren't allowed, almost right next to guards, just kind of shooting from the hip, and you can't even hear it, especially if there's people talking, etc. The metering, I'm kind of old school, so I like spot metering and sometimes center weighted. I'm not big into this 3D matrix metering or whatever it's called, you know, because, okay, let's say for example, you wanted to take a shot of me right now. Well, you've got this really bright window here, so it's going to take that into account. You've got this really dark area here. You've got me. So it's gonna average all that, and chances are you're gonna get something weird. If it works for you, if you shoot raw and you're great at computer manipulation, awesome. My hat's off to you. I wish I do use Lightroom. I have Photoshop. I don't know. I mean, I took a Photoshop course, just like a 3-week-long course on, you know, you go on Saturdays and Sundays. Very basic stuff. Probably don't remember too much of it. That was a long time ago. But anyway, I've done some cool some cool long exposure night shots with it. With the D7000, one thing on the Ken Rockwell website, which is a great tool to go to for recommendations overall. Still don't use that as your only resource. I almost made a mistake of getting that back when he was advocating that the Nikon D40 was all that anybody ever needed. I almost bought one and then realized that it didn't have a lot of the features that I needed, especially in the studio. So yeah, it was a great camera for your average, very casual user, but if you get into photography more than just your, no, I had a photography teacher once who said, who was critiquing a contact sheet of mine, and she basically looked up at me and said, what are these? And I said, oh, I was just having fun. And she goes, isn't photography fun? Isn't it always supposed to be fun? So having fun means that you're supposed to have bad images, overexposed, underexposed, out of focus. So I've never forgot those words. It's amazing what, with digital, that so many people think that they can use Photoshop to correct something, and a lot of those people have no idea how to even use Photoshop. Yet technically you can create or recreate an image pixel by pixel, and it's basically graphic art. That's why I advocate that there should be two hobbies, one graphic art and one photography, because basically the amount of manipulation that goes into some of these, and granted they are amazing and I wish that I could do it, and this might just be jealousy coming out, but I think it just takes away from the purity. It takes away from the and now what's even worse is most photos that people take now are with an iPhone and or I even see people taking pictures with their iPads, which looks ridiculous, by the way. Please don't do that. I mean, unless it's the only thing that you have with you that has a camera in it, and it's a great shot that you have to take, then sure, whatever you have, use. Okay, so we're now double the time. I'm not gonna get under this 10-minute thing. I am really trying, but anyway, so the D7000 is kind of, I would compare it to to a modern sports car, to a modern sports car. Let's compare it to let's say a Porsche. It's fast, but it's like a modern Porsche mixed with a Hummer. Like, it's heavy, but as far as what you can shoot at ridiculously high speeds, high ISOs. I'm not going to say the high ISO grain is superb, only because, and that was one of its claims to fame when it first came out. However, the X100s far surpasses it in the high ISO range, if you ask me. They did something with the sensor where they randomized the pixels, so it looks more like film grain in the X100 and then in the X100s. So you've got custom settings. You can, most of the time if I'm shooting, I'm in full manual mode. The problem with having an auto mode is this. When I first got this camera, and at the time I had a lot more free time than I do now, so this is a great way to make some extra money and have a hobby at the same time. So basically I was just like, well, if I can make enough money to pay off my camera gear, that would be great. It wasn't like it was. So I shot a birthday party, and I was so nervous shooting my first event that I put the camera on auto and shot, and then just kept shooting away. Put the SB800 flash on top, and had that on TTL, and had the high speed sync on, and all that nifty Nikon I'm not going to call it propaganda, but all of those great marketing tools and new technology, I guess you could say. And it was very dark, so basically the flash was the only thing illuminating the room. And on the rear LCD, I used to carry around a loop from my light table that I had for in the film days, and looking into the LCD for sharpness, and everything looked good. Well, I came home and uploaded the photos. There wasn't a single photo that was in good focus. So yeah, so don't trust auto is I once heard a photographer call auto mode automatically bad. Program mode gives you a little bit more flexibility. You have some combinations. You've got shutter priority, aperture priority, full manual. You've got two custom. You've got U1 and U2. You can with the D7000 is still considered like a prosumer camera. So for hobbyists and for professional use, so it does have your scene mode, so it guesses, you know, if you're it doesn't have the pictures on the dial like some of the other cameras, but if you go into the menu system, you can choose like a runner or a skier. I haven't looked at it in a long time, but it'll guess, like, you know, if you're at a beach, it'll try to guess the white balance compensation for that, or if there's white snow, and it tries. And yeah, I've slowly seen the technology get better and better, but still not there. So yeah, so it's and it shoots video, but and it was supposed to be the first camera, the first DSLR with built-in with autofocus, and the autofocus is absolutely awful. I actually returned my first camera because I thought something was wrong with it. You can pick up the sound of the autofocus in your recording. I guess the only useful purpose I could see is a stationary object and an external mic. I have the Rode, I forgot the name of it, the Video Mic Pro or something like that. It's like a boom mic that sits on top. And anyway, or if you want to get artistic and focus manually, you could do that. But the autofocus in live view, so when the image is on the back of the camera, and when you're shooting video, it is absolutely terrible. But you know, it's first generation for a fully integrated. I mean, this, you know, if you look at like the D4 or any of the high-end professional cameras, they don't have built-in flashes, etc. So, you know, whatever. Great camera if your kids play sports, if you go to a lot of sporting events. I wouldn't suggest it for a professional sports photographer. You can get much faster burst rates and autofocus from other cameras, but it's a great camera if you need that, you know, if you need the long lenses. I mean, I have up to a 600 millimeter lens on this, and then I have a device that doubles it. It does make the lens extremely slow, but you know, you can get really close. So you can't do that with the Fuji X100s. The only optional lens for this camera actually is longer, but makes it into more of a wide-angle lens, and it screws on. It's kind of a toy. I mean, I guess if you do a lot of landscape photography, it's something to consider, but it's not anything I would be interested in. If you want to do a separate video on just my thoughts of the X100s, because I could go on forever about this, but kind of the main reason, and I know we're at 30 minutes, so you know what, I'll just keep going and say what I have to say, and just keep working on making these videos shorter and shorter. Okay, so the other day it was freezing cold out here in Chicago, and the river and a lot of Lake Michigan was covered in chunks of ice, and there are bridges that you can walk and drive over. So I stood on one of those and took some shots. And what I did was, now I know it wasn't completely fair because I have a 50 millimeter lens on the Leica, and I have a fixed 35 on the Fuji, but I set the you can do in-camera film simulation, etc., which is actually really neat, because Fuji Velvia, even though there have been many different variations, I think it's most similar to Velvia 50. I mean, it really punches up colors, which I absolutely love. But I put it on black and white with a yellow filter for contrast, and that's what I have on my Leica. Is an actual, if you see, there's like a yellow tint. So I was trying to be as apples to apples as possible. Now I have not gotten the film processed yet, so I don't know the results. What I will tell you is this: it was very, very cold out. It was below freezing. I'll put it that way. But I wanted to. It's something I've been looking out my window, and I've been taking pictures from my balcony all winter long, and I was like, you know, I really need to just get down there and do it, or else I'm gonna really regret not. So I was wearing two pairs of gloves, both relatively thin. One kind of like a cotton lining glove, and then a cashmere lined leather glove that's relatively thin as well. So we're not talking about thick ski gloves. And still, the controls on both cameras, actually, the X100s and the Leica M6, were a little bit difficult to use with two gloves on. When I took one off, it was fine. But so that's now with digital cameras, you know, a lot of people think the well, I mean, it's true. The advantage is you can take a ton of photos. You're not paying per cost of photo technically, although there are ways of finding your shutter count, and if you ever go to resell your camera, people ask you what the shutter count is, and the higher the shutter count, the more likely it was used and needs to be serviced in theory, just because it's mechanical. But yeah, so I have 4 batteries. These are not all Fuji brand. These are all different brands, and it's the NP95 battery. And when you get these batteries out in the cold, be prepared to use all 4 of them. I was outside for maybe 2 hours shooting, and went through at least 2 of them. So yeah, so if you're planning like a day trip in the winter, or camping in the winter, make sure you have enough batteries. I don't do a lot of chimping, which is looking at the back of the LCD. I don't, I sometimes keep this back LCD cover on, so it's basically like shooting like a film camera. You do have the electronic viewfinder and the hybrid optical, which is incredible, but I use the optical with, I do like the frame lines. So but anyway, the battery life, I mean, it's a small battery. I mean, look at this compared to the Nikon. It's pretty much exactly twice as thick, and the Nikon battery is a little bit longer. So, but I will tell you that the battery, I've never taken this camera out in the extreme cold, so I haven't lived in Chicago for very long. So, I can't tell you how what the life is like on that, but now looking in the viewfinder, like I said, I have a 16 gigabyte. This is an Extreme Pro SanDisk. Highly recommend these cards. I've had cards fail. I've had cheap cards fail. I've been using memory cards since the compact flash days, when in order to get a high capacity compact flash card, it was actually like a hard drive. It actually had like a spinning disk in it, well, like a non-solid state hard drive. So now you've got extremely high capacities. Every year they get bigger and bigger, but so does camera resolution, so your file sizes get bigger too. But still, I mean, I'm shooting right now, I have this set to large file size, fine JPEG, which is your best JPEG. I do shoot RAW a lot when I do shoot this, but this is, I think it maxes out at, it's telling me I have 1,000 shots remaining, but I think the counter maxes out at 1,000, so there's probably more. With the I keep wanting to talk about the X100s. It's just, this is the this this camera, if you're going to an event or a party or whatever, it stands out. Any DSLR, you know, and the D7000 without the grip, and there are smaller lenses, but it's still, it's like, you know, it's, I don't know. The X100s is just like a classy little accessory. You can put it over one shoulder, and you know, you can get a Billingham makes a small little rangefinder bag that does have a strap, but also has belt loops, or loop it onto another bag if you're traveling. So that's what I use for my rangefinders. Now the Leica M6. Okay, let's talk about this. M6 I went with. First of all, I got this one. I got it pre-owned. It's in Leica. People tend to be in a very interesting category of people who are perfectionists, etc. So most of them that you'll find used are in almost like new shape, if not like new. I plan on using this camera and shooting it, so I didn't really care if it was cosmetically perfect, and saved some money because of that. I did get this strap, which is not, it comes with a Leica strap, but this is I think it's from Lance, and I got these rubber, like, it's like a rubber grommet. I don't know how well you can see, but, and then it's got leather, and then this really soft fabric that's long enough to go over one shoulder too, and then bring up to your eye to shoot. So it's something like this. Now this is a lot of people think that all Leicas use spot metering, and they don't. It's more of a center weighted. You can actually, if you do a Google search on Leica metering system, Google M6, because some of like the M3s, the M2s, some of the earlier ones used external meters that went onto the hot shoe. Anyway, the light meter is great. I was talking about the M6, the reason why I went with an M6 over an M7. First of all, this was one of the first production M6s. You can tell because Leica quickly realized that this area is subject to a lot of abuse, so they put like a little rubber pad there on the newer M6s. And there's also engraving, instead of it says Ernst Leitz Wetzlar GmbH on top, the engravings on the back. I don't know if I showed you guys the back. This is just a simple dial where you change the ISO for your film speed. Battery wise, it takes like a ton of different types. There are these two in here as a battery compartment. I'm not even going to bother unscrewing it, because I'm sure a lot of you know what like a hearing aid battery looks like, and they last forever, and it takes like a ton of different types. So and you can tell when unlike the X100s, which when your battery dies, it gives you no warning. It just shows full battery, and then it dies. And sometimes you can turn it off, wait a couple minutes, turn it on, and squeeze out a couple more shots. These, you know, one of the great things about the film days were the only thing that cameras like this used a battery for were for a very simple light meter. And you know, this has a manual crank. I have no interest in getting the motor drive for it. Like I said, I did get a 35mm lens and a 90mm. This is all pre-owned. I did want the if you've ever seen the movie Blood Diamond, the female photojournalist, I forgot her name. She has this lens in the 35mm version, with the, you see this little there's like a focusing tab. Let's see if I can, a little tab that extends out, and I really like that. I was talking to my local Leica guy, and he said a lot of Americans don't. It's more of a, it's popular in Europe, but not in America. I don't know why. You also have the PC sync port in the back. So I mean, I can do a review on each of these, but I just wanted to show you size comparison, do an overall, like tell you why I use each camera and when. The camera that's been, I mean, when I got my X100s, and it still is, this is my baby, this is my, you know, I absolutely love it. It's everything it was hyped up to be and more when it came out. I mean, the waiting lists were crazy. They're still sometimes hard to get. They're awesome. If I could just own one camera, this would be it. It's got an auto setting on the aperture ring. It has an auto setting on the shutter speed ring. It has auto ISO, so if you want to you know, just use it fully automatic. I'm not endorsing that, but you do have that option. And then if you switch to with a rangefinder, you're not looking through the lens, you're looking through a separate window, and they do this, you've got a little bit differently than most rangefinders, but anyway, you have two superimposed images, and you focus until they line up. Now, the X100s has not super fast, I mean, compared to like a Nikon DSLR, but it has a great autofocus system. Unfortunately, it can be improved because it's got autofocus single and autofocus continuous, and then manual focus. Autofocus single is great for just taking that, you know, it locks on, but if the subject moves, you're now out of focus, depending on your aperture, etc. But the continuous, what it does is, it's not a continuous like a continuous servo mode or something that you would find on a big DSLR, where you can track an object, or at least the camera attempts to. I've honestly never found that to be too successful. So that's something that could be improved. The manual focus options on the X100s are kind of more like a novelty, although that they are great. But they do use more battery power, because it's a superimposed split image, so you line up the image, and then it's in focus, and there's a couple ways of manually focusing it, but it's kind of like a novelty feature, although a lot of people do use it. Alright, so kind of like the last thing I want to cover in this video, which is 5 times longer than I really wanted it to be, is film. This is 3200 Ilford Delta 3200 professional black and white film. So this is a low light film. Depending on the developer, the actual chemical that the lab or you, if you have your own darkroom, use, you can reduce that grain, but it's a great film. I like when I shoot black and white, I like that nostalgic aspect of it, so I don't mind the grain, and I don't know what else to say. It's a very versatile film. For daylight, this is a I guess some of you are young enough that you've never been seen film, but this is a new cartridge, so it has this little film leader, so a little piece of film sticking out. Now keep in mind these are all 35mm, which was adapted from movie or motion picture film. There is medium format film, which is 120, which the film's about that tall, and you can normally get less frames out of a roll. There's 220. And then you get into your large format cameras. The larger, basically what replaced the film is a light sensitive product that records the image, and that's basically what a sensor is in a digital camera. There you go. You don't have to worry about cleaning your sensor on a film camera, or dust or dirt getting in, really. I mean, as long as you're relatively careful when you change lenses. I'm an extremist, so I don't really change lenses, you know, unless I'm like in my car or at home or in an area that's really controlled. And there is like some sort of ultrasonic cleaner in the D7000. I've never got any noticeable dirt on the sensor on this. On my D70 I did. There was like, it looked like a little hair or something that that happened like right before I got rid of it, and like I said, that was my first DSLR, so probably wasn't the most careful with that camera. So I've shown you film, and basically the way I have film in the Leica, so I can't show you how to load and unload it, but there are other videos that, if you type in YouTube how to load a Leica M6, that there's some great videos out there. Dan Tamarkin is on YouTube. He has the nation's largest Leica only photography store, and it's a beautiful store, and great products, new and pre-owned, some great prints on the walls, and it's kind of like the perfect location for it in this like design type district of Chicago, and really nice guy, will answer any question. if he doesn't have a product in stock, he can get it for you. You know, if I had the money to get the lenses new, or if, you know, wanted to spend the money to get a new lens, for example, I'd love to have the 50mm 0.95. You know, we're talking like a $12,000 lens that's a fixed 50mm that's relatively heavy, but you can get some extremely shallow depth of field with it. So the great thing about Leica lenses is they pretty much hold their value if you buy them used, or pre-owned, or, you know, on the auction sites, and just take care of them. You know, you want to store them out of a humid environment. You want to look for fungus, haze, the working of the aperture blades. There's something called a CLA, which is a clean lube and adjust. You know, I should do a video on getting your first Leica and things to look for. So I think I'm gonna stop now and do a quick video on that. But so I hope this was informative. I hope some of you get back into shooting film, even if it's, you know, I mean, I'm not biased towards digital or film. I don't want to see film go away. There's something about not knowing if you got the shot you wanted or not until you look at the negative, or a contact sheet, or a print, and that waiting, that, you know, that just, there's like a nostalgic aspect to it, which you all know I like. There's it slows you down. I tend to get better photos when I shoot film than when I shoot digital. I can go an entire day shooting digital and maybe get a handful of keepers. With film, it's the cost is, you know, is really, it's pretty high right now, to be honest with you. I mean, you can shop around, and there are still, I know around here there are Walgreens that do photo finishing. I found a pretty reasonable photo lab, so I'm not going to endorse them until I get some film processed, but they do print film, slide film, and black and white. So and then I found a print lab here that does black and white that is absurdly expensive but does absurdly quality work. You know, a lot of movie stars, etc., they've done the prints of them. So you know, you kind of have to play. There's a lot of variables with film, and there's a lot of variables with digital. I personally, from experience, think there's more variables with digital, even though that's not supposed to be the case. So the whole idea is, you know, consistency. With film, you know, you've got, but basically a camera is a light tight box. So what makes one camera better than the next is the quality of the glass, which is, you know, I don't want to start a YouTube battle, but that's what Leica prides itself on, is having superb optical glass in their lenses, hence the outrageous price tags, and the fact that they actually get money for, you know, people actually buy them, and I'm not just talking professionals or extremely rich amateurs. People do save up for these lenses or whatever. They're great. And then to finish off, I got some messages about light meters. Do you still need them? Do people still use them, etc.? This is a Sekonic light meter. It's the model L358. I do have the device in here that will allow me to, in the studio, I can remotely fire off my my strobes to get reflected readings, and to get readings. You have the bulb. So anyway, these are still very useful. If you get a older Leica, which someday I might, like an M3, then you need a standalone light meter, and you can get the older light meters, and you can get, there's a link on Ken Rockwell's website to places that do complete, to the guy's name is Gus. He does complete overhauls of Leica cameras. A Leica is a precision instrument. When you hold this camera in your hand, it's I wouldn't say it's heavy. I mean, it is heavy, but it's a different heavy than the DSLR. It's solid. This is honestly the camera that I've been throwing in my bag, not throwing, but placing in my bag every day with a couple rolls of film. And it's just solid. I mean, you can tell it's built. It's a German camera. It's a precision instrument, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I won't buy a digital Leica. But besides the extreme price tag, you're paying a lot of money for a great build quality, but a camera that's going to be outdated. There's something called digital rot, and basically technology improves, and then the camera's value goes down. I guarantee you I can shoot with this M6 for a couple years and sell it for probably more than I paid for it. So I don't know if it's enough to counteract the cost of film and processing and enlargements, etc. Because the more I look into that, the scarier it is. It can get pretty costly. Especially if you want an actual print of every single picture that you've taken, especially in black and white. So I'm gonna do a separate review on some of these, but I hope that was helpful. If you're looking for a camera, if you're looking for just real quick, just to finish up, if you want my recommendations, if you're looking for a pocket-sized camera that you can throw in your pocket bag, purse, briefcase, suit jacket pocket, etc. The Canon, and I can't believe I'm saying it because I'm a Nikon guy, but the Canon, the point and shoots, the S95 is basically what sold me on them. The S95, you basically have full manual control, if you so choose. Great picture quality, great build quality. and I think they have like the S100 and then the S110. That there's I don't know what the latest variant is on it, and they now have it with GPS encoding, so I think it's called meta tags, so you always know exactly where you took that shot once you upload it. So yeah, so they're great, and they zoom. If you want, now the Canon makes the G series. They're thicker and actually not as good of a camera as the S's. They're a little bit slower. They're just a bulky. It's kind of like, if you know, it feels good, but not really worth it. The Hasselblad Lunar, totally outrageously overpriced. It's pretty much has the same electronics as, don't quote me on this, but I think the Panasonic. It's a beautiful camera, but not really practical for anything. Oh, and the Canon S does zoom, so that's a plus for you know, anybody who wants. It has a optical zoom, meaning the glass goes in and out, and then there's a cutoff point where it'll tell you, now we're going to go into digital zoom, which would be like which would basically be like zooming in. So I kind of stay away from that, but I have a couple of friends who have them, and absolutely love them. It's great. It's a great pocket camera. Small sensor, so you know, if you're planning on making prints, basically the larger the sensor or the film, the less it's being enlarged, and just like anything else, if you're to stretch something, it's going to lose quality, and that's what this whole sensor war is about. And then megapixels are just how many dots are on that sensor. So for example, it doesn't matter how many megapixels an iPhone camera will have. It's still never going to be good as like a digital point and shoot or anything else, because it has a limited sensor size. So when you open up the picture, I mean, it looks decent, but you know, what's really sad to me is that I've seen a lot of parents who just, you know, are taking these blurry iPhone pictures of their babies growing up, and we're going to have an entire generation that doesn't have good quality pictures of when they were children. So okay, so anyway, after that tangent, moving up from the Canon S, the smallest, what Ken Rockwell, these are not my words, but I believe it, the smallest real camera is the Fuji X100s, and see, it's not that big. It's, you know, it's shorter than my hand. The case adds a little bit to it, but it fits, you know, in a bag, and I've had it fit in some coat pockets. You know, it fits in most in bags. So this is the smallest real camera. It has a the same size sensor as most DSLRs. So yeah, and then of course now Fuji does make a system with interchangeable lenses that's similar, but if you go on the Ken Rockwell website, he actually sold all of his equipment in that system when the X100s came out. It's that amazing. If you want like the ultimate family travel, new parent, whatever camera, the X100s. You know, when your child gets older and you want to take pictures of his soccer games, let's say, you can always get a DSLR with a telephoto lens and use it for that. But it's not like, you know, you don't have to lug it around everywhere you go. If you're like me and you're nostalgic and you want basically full digital cameras did not come out because of a quality improvement over analog. They came out because of a convenience. In the late 90s, newspaper reporters were able to shoot on digital cameras and upload them, and they weren't great quality, but newspaper images aren't great quality anyway, so they didn't really have to be. So digital came out as a convenience, not as a, not because of quality. Since then, you know, most of these cameras have sensors. So if you imagine like a box in the camera that when you click the shutter opens up and lets light into this light capturing sensor, which is like film. These can be very, very small, and the smaller they are, that means that when you make the final image larger, it's not as clear. If you've ever seen a medium format image, or especially a large format field camera image, like a 4x5 field camera or an 8x10, I mean, you can get an 8x10 field camera. These are those old-fashioned, but it's technically the best image quality you can get. An 8x10 piece of sheet film in a accordion. These are the big accordion cameras where the photographer goes under the hood and takes the shot. You know, those are the cameras that a lot of magazine covers, calendars, etc. are shot on. Because if if you print that negative to an 8x10, you're not doing any enlargement whatsoever. So it's crystal clear. So yeah, so I think I kind of went on a rant and lost focus on this video, and it's over seven times longer than I wanted it to be, but hope it taught you something about cameras and photography, and maybe helped you make a choice on which camera you want as your next camera. So yeah, so happy shooting, and thank you for watching. Bye.